Okay, hi everybody. Welcome. I don't know what is going on with my hair. Okay, we are here tonight. I'm Aimee. I'm Dr. Aimee Baron from I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. And we are here tonight. We are going to be going live with Chanie Wassner, who is Farmy in the City, to talk about circumstantial infertility. I know that there's been a lot of heaviness around here lately, and I'm not going to promise that this topic is going to be any lighter, but it's just another topic of circumstantial infertility that we need to talk about. So let me grab her. Here she comes. She is really one of the people who's been public about talking about the single system. Hey, Chanie, how are you?
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello. Chanie has been, now I have to figure out, 1 second, give me a second. Okay. Chanie has been really, frankly, public on her platform, on her handle, talking about the plight of the single person. And I just thought, who better to really have this discussion with in a more dedicated way to talk about the different nuances and really bring them out so that we as a community can be more aware of what people are going through and how we can support and help. So I'm going to turn this over to you, and please introduce yourself for the people who don't know you.
Okay, sure. So my name is Chanie. I'm a bunch of things. I'm a clinical pharmacist. I'm a very proud New Yorker. And I also happen to be a single woman dating in the Orthodox religious Jewish world. And I have this Instagram page for several years now, and it's kind of become a whole bunch of things where I pretty much talk about what I'm passionate about. So whether that be healthcare, my profession, dating, and especially being a single woman in our religious world, I've found that like part of like the most inspiring and important work, if I can dare say, that I do on my page is giving a voice or speaking about things that like may not be easy for me to talk about or comfortable, but is definitely hard for single people in a community that's so focused on marriage to talk about and give a voice to. So that is something that I'm really passionate about. And I think it's really important to talk about this topic, like circumstantial infertility, which is a terminology that I was not familiar with until really like maybe a year and a half ago or two, not even, I don't know. Do you want me to like briefly say how it even came up?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So pretty much, it was probably like 2 years ago, and I was out with a friend for dinner, and I don't remember the details, but it had something to do with dating, and someone had brought up something about how like a lot of times when you're dating as a woman, a lot of men will not go out with you if you're even their age, but definitely if you're like a day older than them because of this like archaic impression about fertility and kind of equating a woman's age with fertility, which is not medically based in any sort of way, and takes out the whole factor about sometimes it's male infertility involved.
Yep.
So we made some sort of comment about it and kind of like punted it to the men and like, why are you always like counting the age of our eggs? What about you guys, right? Like no one worries about that in our dating process, which is like shidduchim. So someone sent me a very critical, chastising message. I think they may have personally been dealing with, medical infertility and was married and kind of chastised us for kind of like mocking their pain. And I think I posted it on my story and asked people for feedback. And it kind of like opened up this conversation where so many single people kind of expressed that and like reinforced what I was feeling, which was, this is our pain too. And it's just not talked about, validated. And it's like, when you're single and looking to get married, right? Like obviously there are some people who are not looking to get married and some people who are not looking to have children. But for a lot of people who are looking to get married, they also may very desperately and painfully want to have a family. And just because they haven't like gotten to that goalpost of finding their person, society seems to forget that it doesn't mean they don't have very deep, raw pain about wanting to have a family. So yeah, that's kind of how I came about this topic. And someone actually messaged me on Instagram and shared this term, circumstantial infertility. And like there isn't much online if you Google it, but when you read, there's like a few good blog posts about it. The Savvy Auntie we spoke about.
Yes, she's amazing. She's amazing. So I'll tag all these people afterwards. So she's Melanie Notkin.
Yes.
The tag the tag. I can't believe I just said that. Her handle is called Savvy Auntie. ANAUNTIE. Savvy Auntie.
Yeah. So she posts some really, like, it resonated with me so much. Like, I can't even remember a time in like recent memory where all these feelings that I had like all of a sudden were just so validated, and like I had permission to feel that way. It was like such an aha moment. And then I think it generated like a really powerful conversation on my page back when I initially spoke about it like a year and a half ago or so.
Yep.
And
So this is exactly what we're going to do here tonight. And I'm so glad that you started with that, because, and I'm just going to read what Chanie Wassner wrote right here. She said, anytime an older guy says there's no cause, the woman is his, okay, we're going to try English here.
Do you need caffeine?
That they only want to date women that they're their age or younger because of the obvious fertility issue that older women have. I'm sort of inferring what she's writing here. And she's saying right here, I say straight up to those people, have you checked their sperm count? And that's exactly the crux of the conversation. So I want to go back to the first thing that you talked about, and really this point that Chanie said. And the reality of the situation is that as a medical person, I can tell you, this is what we learn in medical school, and all the OBGYNs and reproductive endocrinologists will tell you, that the percentage of women and the percentage of men that are the cause of medical infertility are exactly the same. And there's also, it's 40% because of the men, it's 40% because of the women, and those other, about 10% is because both of them have a problem. And then the other 10% is kind of like nobody can figure it out and it's unexplained. And so this idea in the shidduch, in the religious dating system, that men will not date women that are above a certain age because their fertility is not as good, is just frankly based on false medical knowledge, right? Like, and yet that's the prevailing thought, right? That's the prevailing thought.
Yeah. It's definitely another painful component of being a woman specifically versus being a man in the shidduch system. It's definitely, I don't think, any like something that men have to deal with, but women do.
Correct. And I think that, this idea of like what Chanie exactly said, the like, who's checking men? Who's checking the men's fertility? Who's checking their sperm count? Like, nobody's doing that. But then I'm like, and now I'm moving. Then the next was, well, how old is she? And, oh, well, she's that age. Oh, did she freeze her eggs? Like, what are we even talking about here? So can you speak a little bit to that point?
I mean, I think it's also like a very invasive question that's just not appropriate. And again, like I think a lot of women who are going through the shidduch system feel very patronized, deal with a lot of invasive questions. Send me this picture. I don't like this picture. Send me another picture. I recently had that, like a matchmaker, I don't know, someone sent to my way, refused to set me up with the 2 pictures that I sent. And I said, I'm like, okay, sorry. These, like, literally the most beautiful photos that I personally like.
And what was wrong with those beautiful photos?
I don't know, but I said I'm not sleeping with her, right? So so either he's gonna like those photos or he won't. Ultimately, right. I think he said yes. Whatever, but right. But I digress. But it's a very invasive experience, and I think that like the fact that people can just ask, like, did you freeze your eggs? There's this like hyper focus on the women's fertility, and no one worries about the men. And freezing eggs is like a very important thing, and I like that there's a lot of conversation about it on Instagram, like even in the religious world. But it's still like a very difficult thing to go through, and definitely a very invasive thing for someone who doesn't know you to ask, and for that to be like incumbent upon them setting you up, I just think is very inappropriate.
Correct. It's the idea, I think, I mean, if I'm gonna, for me, it's like you're asking about whether someone has had a medical procedure. Are you asking about, before you even meet them, are you asking them, to see their medical records? Like, are you asking to, see everything that's, they've ever seen a doctor for? Are you asking them about whether they've had an appendectomy, whether they still have their tonsils, whether they have, like, it's a ridiculous question on its face. It's a ridiculous question.
Yeah, and I think like unfortunately like a lot of women, because there's like an imbalance of how many women are getting set up versus men, I think a lot of women feel pressure to answer things that they would normally have boundaries about responding. But you don't want to, like, God forbid, upset a matchmaker or have some sort of reputation. She's difficult, she's out there, she's I don't know what. um and I think it's just another component of invasive questions that people should not be asking. Yeah.
And now, like, to sort of get back to this, like, why are we talking about this? Why are you and I having this conversation here on I Was Supposed to Have a Baby? I mean, it's because of this pain and this, like, the essence of you people who are single in the shidduch system, or not the shidduch system, people who've had this idea for their lives. They viewed, what they all of their hopes and dreams for the future was with a partner, and it was starting a family with someone else, and it was starting a family not alone. And so this we're having the conversation here because there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of grief in that, and this concept of, you should just freeze your eggs, or you should just like go out and make sure that you're doing what you need to in the meantime, keeping yourself healthy, keeping yourself like these constructs of the things that women need to do to keep themselves ready for that next man is something that is really just not okay.
Yeah. And by the way, I lost my train of thought, what I was going to say. I also think that sometimes freezing eggs is kind of like romanticized, because it is an amazing medical intervention that wasn't available in the same way 20 years ago. And it's a great safety blanket. And sometimes people have shared with me that they found it really empowering. And I haven't personally frozen my eggs yet, but and so I can't really necessarily say how the process would actually be. But as someone who has watched close friends go through it, and just envisioning going through it and knowing that it's like, sometimes people don't realize that it's a tedious process. And I did like a live with Sahar about it. And like, I learned a lot from her about what is involved, and I didn't even realize like the extent of it. And I think, like, for me personally, like, the thought is like, it's kind of like shattered dreams. It's just like, it's a very difficult thing to go through any sort of fertility procedure. And then when you're doing it alone, when you don't have support, not to compare a couple actively trying to have a baby and dealing with medical fertility, but there's something to say about going through that grief with a partner.
At that 1,000%. And I think, like, so teasing apart a number of these different pieces, which I think are really important. Number one, freezing your eggs is not foolproof. As we've talked about here on this page a number of times, we've had people come on and share their stories. And just because you have eggs frozen doesn't mean that it's going to guarantee you a baby down the line.
Right.
Sometimes those eggs don't survive the thaw. Sometimes, even if they survive the thaw, then you also have to get good sperm in order to be able to fertilize them. Sometimes you don't get all of them to fertilize. Most of the time, in fact, you don't get all of them to fertilize. And then the percentage of the actual good embryos, meaning the ones that are perfect genetically, as opposed to the ones that have some sort of chromosomal abnormality, you know, are that's an even smaller slice of this pie. And so, you know, the idea that just freezing your eggs is the correct, the just. We're gonna come back to the just later. We are, because of that amazing reel that you made right before this. But we're gonna come back to the just. But just because you have eggs doesn't guarantee you a baby. So that's the first thing that both of us wanted to share. The second piece about it is all of the pieces that you mentioned about how hard it is to go through this process when you don't have support. And I think that because what people don't realize is that freezing your eggs is exactly like going through IVF. It is. It's exactly IVF, really, up until the point where those eggs are being matched with a sperm. So it's all of the shots and all of the early morning monitoring and all of the side effects and all of the bloating and all of the mood swings and all of the things. And there's no one to complain to often, because it's usually something that's done in private. There are very few people who know, usually. And so therefore, you're not getting the support from a spouse or a partner, and you're definitely not getting support from a wider circle of people. So it's really, really hard. Now, again, I don't want to scare people off and say that, you know, IVF can't be like totally fine, perfect. Some people do this and like they don't get the mood swings, they don't get the bloating, they don't get the weight gain. They're totally fine, and for them it's more of an annoyance, and it's not always so horrible and terrible, but it can be. And so it's important to share all of those pieces, and to do all of that alone is really hard. We are, by the way, I should say, you mentioned that there was somebody who you did a live with. We are going to be bringing on someone in the next couple of months-ish who has just gone through the egg freezing process as a single woman, and she's recovering right now. And she said that, you know, in the next few weeks, God willing, few months, that she'll be ready to talk about it, and she will speak to us about that in depth.
That's
But
awesome.
but and let's talk about now the financial piece. Like, can everybody afford to freeze their eggs, even if they want to? I mean, go ahead, Chanie. I'm going to let you take that.
Another fave of mine, which is featured in my reel. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people in general, not in the context of egg freezing, kind of make this assumption about the finances of a single person, because yes, raising children is very expensive, and Jewish education is highway robbery.
Yep.
So yeah.
Unless you live in Israel. Okay, let's just call
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yep.
So in general, I mean, I've had people message me that, like, you know, they've had family members reach out to them and, like, you know, assume that they're going to pay for things and sponsor things just because they're single. And like, people seem to forget that when someone has a single income, they have a single income, and they're also paying for everything themselves. So whether that's the rent, the mortgage, the car, the insurance, groceries for yourself, all those things, you know. And not like, sometimes single people are more financially comfortable, and maybe they have a good job and they don't have those additional expenses of children, but that's not always the case. And when you're paying all those expenses yourself, you're just one income. I think it's really unfair that people just assume that they can financially do everything.
Correct. And so this is the point where I just want to bring it up, just for a resource for people. The organization Bonei Olam actually recently started a specific section of their organization devoted to people who are considering egg freezing. What that means, and I'll link that afterwards, put that in stories and here. What that means is that they will offer emotional support and walk people through it. This is what they're saying all on their website, and I've spoken to the coordinator of this. In addition, for all of the rest of you who are interested in donating to people who are single, who are wanting to do egg freezing who can't afford it, there is a separate link on that page, and all those monies go to people who would be doing egg freezing. So I think that it's really important to talk about resources here, because it's really very, very rare that anything is paid for in terms of egg freezing, but they are offering this program. There are other places that do like a little bit of subsidy here and there. I've heard that PUA also has some funds for egg freezing, not as coordinated of a program, but that they do have some funds. Hebrew Free Loan, which exists frankly in all major American cities, they do accept applications for loans for fertility treatments in general, and egg freezing is considered to be one of those treatments. So those are resources for people out there if you are considering it. But the reality is that this can cost, $10,000 or upwards, depending on where you are in the country. And not everyone can afford it. It's exactly what Chanie said.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just move to the like, okay, so you're single and you want to be a parent, but you can't be because you've dreamt that your whole life that, you're going to be a parent with a partner. So what about being a single parent? Why is that a problem? Why aren't people considering that more? And I'm saying that all facetiously because, we all know how easy single parents have it. It's so phenomenal. Okay, I'm going to answer that question in a second. So just give me the person who just asked about whether they make the person feel comfortable. I'll go back to that in a second, but I want to just move to single parents. We had a woman on. I keep saying that I'm going to link it, but I promise I'm going to put it in.
Okay.
We had a woman named Sarah Blum actually a few months ago. She lives in Canada. She's a social worker for High Lifeline in Canada. And she is a single parent by choice. And she spoke to us all about her story and how difficult it was. She is in the Orthodox community in Toronto, and how difficult it was to even make that decision, number one. And then once she made that decision, to get her parents to sign on and support her, how her community feels about that. I urge all of you to take a listen to it because it is a beautiful story, and it really shows the ups and downs of what one goes through to try to become a single parent and all of the pieces afterwards. But it's not that easy. And I wanted you to talk about that too, Chanie.
Yeah, so I've definitely had people also throw that out casually, like, oh, worst comes to worst, you could just become a single parent and
adopt or like get a sperm donor, just like get
right,
a sperm donor,
get a sperm donor
on the corner,
yeah,
and Target, yeah. Yeah.
First of all, I think like as much as someone might really want to have children, it's really hard to be a single parent, and you want to do that with a partner. It's really hard to make that decision regardless of the community that you live in, to then choose to be a single parent. But then put the community aspect in it. It's definitely not something that happens frequently. And it's definitely something that would like put you as like a topic of conversation. So someone had told me like, oh, you could become a single parent. I know this person who did it. And then said like, oh yeah, but she had a hard time getting her kids into schools. So I don't think our community as a whole, I'm sure there are more modern, accepting communities.
There are, but
I think the general, even if people wouldn't obviously be unaccepting, I think you sign up for a life knowing that you are always going to be a topic of gossip. Your kids are always going to be a topic of gossip. And so as someone who messaged me when I spoke about this a long time ago, she had a conversation with a guy friend who she said was, very liberal and open-minded and, a feminist, etc. And she said something to the effect of like, okay, so like if a woman went and became a single parent, because he said something to her, you could just become a single parent. She's like, if you knew,
just
if you knew that someone was a single parent by choice, would you date them? And he couldn't say that he would.
Right.
So if you, besides for the part of like your life becoming in general more difficult and judged and those children, your dating options also significantly reduce.
Right.
So at least
Right.
within the community.
Correct. Look, we're not speaking about these things in absolutes, right? Like none of us have done, formal research papers. We're both
Right.
we're both clinicians and we both
This is
both
not evidence-based. This is
correct.
anecdotal hypothesis
Correct.
generating.
Exactly. This is all anecdotal, but I think, these are things that people talk about and these are things that really come up for people. Like it's not so easy to just become a single parent for all of those reasons. Like it's harder to date, probably because it means that you're taking on another child and that child has not had a father figure. I'm going to use women here because I just think it's easier. I don't know. I frankly, I don't think I've come across, you can tell me, any man who's become a single father. I think it's only women who become single mothers. I'm just, I'm
It's not
overgeneral.
typical. Are we saying by choice?
By choice, by
Oh,
choice,
yeah.
by
I mean,
choice.
I've personally never met anyone not by choice. Yeah, not by
Again,
choice.
anecdotal, not research based, but I think this idea, right? Then you're limiting it. It is potentially and in the shit off system, people feel. I know you said this on your platform, on your, I keep saying platform, on your handle a lot, that it's already difficult for women, and to then become a single parent would put an even bigger stumbling block in terms of getting someone to accept a date. And so these are not things that anybody takes lightly. Anybody.
Right. And it could be the right decision for someone, and if you truly believe and have stronger bitachon than maybe I have, then you believe that your person will find you, right? But practically it can just be a much more lonely existence, and for some people that might be I'm sure there are people who have made that difficult decision and been very happy with it, but you put yourself at risk for kind of like a social stigma that is also not easy to live with.
Correct. Again, unless you are in some of the more liberal modern
Right.
orthodox or
Right.
conservative community, like these other communities where being a single parent, it doesn't carry that same stigma.
Right.
Absolutely.
There are definitely communities that I think would be absolutely accepting.
Yes.
But
Yes, there are. There
yeah.
are. Okay, so let me just get back to this question. There's a question here that says, this is back to Bonei Olam, and how comfortable, do you know how comfortable they make the person when they're calling, just because that first call can be so intimidating, and then the next person said, I thought I was the only one that felt uncomfortable. Look, I hear all the time from people about how it's so wonderful that there are so many resources out there, but it's too hard for them to pick up the phone and make that first phone call or to send that first email. And so my heart goes out to all of you. I know that it's not easy reaching out for help and reaching out for support. It is putting yourself out there and making yourself vulnerable in a way that you've never done before. These are sensitive, these are private, these are topics that are still not discussed at the Shabbos table, right? Like general infertility, general pregnancy loss are things that we are doing a better job talking about. But the like, hey, I just need to run downstairs and like shoot myself up with some drugs because I'm gonna like my ovaries are about to burst and like I'm trying to have a kid, maybe hopefully in the future. So I'm trying to save it for my future. Like, yeah, we're just not really talking about that yet. Um, so my heart goes out to all of you. Look, the only thing I can say is that I know that the people there know who's calling them. They know that it's single women who have gotten to this place in their lives that they never thought they would be. These are all people. Egg freezing is not a first choice for people. Egg freezing is a second choice for people. They thought their lives were going to look different. And so I know that these people are trained. Do I know that each of them are going to be as sensitive as all of you need? I don't know that, and I can't promise that. But they are specifically answering the phone call, and they know that the phone calls are coming in from this program. So I hope that each of you are treated with the dignity and the sensitivity that you deserve.
You just touched on also something before that reminded me about why it's also so painful that like this feeling that a lot of us have and this grief is invalidated, plus the component of not maybe until now having like an organized way that any of these organizations support singles.
Yep.
Is that like our existence as single people in a community that's so marriage minded and marriage focused, we feel like second class citizens. And it's like such a like it just exacerbates the grief to feel like people almost don't care, or it's just not even something on people's consciousness. When I was like looking up those websites, not because I was proceeding with like freezing my eggs at the moment, but when I was looking into it, because I got so many messages from people that said that none of these large organizations dedicate like an actual amount of funds or have like a clear page. I was heartbroken and crying just because like I couldn't find like a clear page that was directed towards single people. I was like, don't we deserve clear guidance? It was like buried somewhere. And it really makes you feel like, wow, like we're not thought about and cared about, if I dare say, and we're not like full citizens of this community that should also be worried about and cared about and should have organizations to support that.
Look, absolutely. And until about 6 months to a year ago, nothing existed. Nothing. And I think that it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And the single community is not going away. There will always be singles in our community. And, we're having this discussion now, and I'm like circling back to it again, right? Because we need to support people who are in this space. I wanna just mention what one person said in the comments. She said that Chef Chaya has a support group for those who are in process of freezing their eggs in IVF. She's done a lot of work on her page talking about her egg freezing process before she got married, and also she's documented on a daily basis this like daily diary of going through IVF now that she is she is married now, and now she's going through IVF also, and she's been documenting that. So any of you who want to take a look at that or join her groups, those are also open. Yeah, look, this is a absolutely devastating situation, and let's talk about the devastating situation, meaning the fact that the community is not doing a better job. And I want to name it, and then I want to just go into like practical things that people can say or do, or people cannot say and not do, in order to make everyone feel welcome. So again, like this like big topic that we're talking about is really called disenfranchised grief. Chanie, can you speak to that? I mean, we've been talking all around it, but
Yeah.
can you define that for all of us?
So disenfranchised grief is also a term that I came across when I Googled circumstantial infertility and read the Savvy Auntie's post. I can never remember her name. I feel so bad, but
Melanie Notkin.
Melanie. Let's just... Wait, I think she might follow me. Is she here?
She's amazing.
Circumstantial grief is just like put everything into perspective and made me feel so seen, but pretty much it's
disenfranchised grief.
Yeah. Yes. Disenfranchised grief.
Mix all the words and mix them up. It all means the same thing. Keep going.
It's 9:40. I'm mumbling my words, but it's pretty much when you have grief or like any type of pain that you feel so isolated because people in general don't understand or really like don't have the capacity to empathize. So this is the kind of scenario that a lot of single people face, because it's not something that people recognize as like infertility or something that you have the right to be legitimately in pain about because you're not in a relationship. And I found it very validating because it exacerbates the grief. Like, part of grief and healing grief, or being able to live with grief, is finding people who can empathize with you and just let you exist with that pain. But when your pain is being constantly denied, and not even denied, like not even acknowledged as in existence, it can be even more painful.
Absolutely. And I want to also speak to the older singles as well, right? There are, at some point, we're gonna do a series on them. I've been approached by some older singles who are in their 40s and 50s, people who it's over for them. They're done. I mean, all of us are pointing towards, all of us in the fertility community just came out last week, and we all talked about Jennifer Aniston, right? She publicly, Jennifer Aniston, for those of you who don't know, the famous actress from Friends and lots of other things. um, she I don't know how old she is. She's probably in her 50s at this point, I think. And she talked about how she's done. She's done. She went through many IVF rounds and was unsuccessful and never got to the point. Was too late to freeze her eggs by the time she started this process. These are all her words. It was a article in the magazine Allure that she was too old to freeze her eggs, and she had really no options left. And this is a woman who, she's been married, I don't know, twice, three times. I'm sorry, I don't keep that close track of her,
I don't
but
remember.
right, twice, twice, Connie.
I think three. We need to
Three?
Google it. I'm not sure.
Okay,
Someone
Connie's
Google
Googling
it.
it. Somebody Google it.
Not me Google it.
Yeah, yeah. But she doesn't have children. And this is the grief of the older single, right? You hoped, you dreamed, you tried, you tried, and you still don't have. And we're going to give space to that twice. Okay, lots of people saying twice.
Hey,
We have
thank
twice.
you.
Thank you. And yeah, this is a deep pain that we're going to name. And so I just want to read some of the things. Okay, lots of people saying
Well,
twice. Breath.
I just want to say something
Yeah.
about Jennifer Aniston, is that part of what she shared. I actually didn't read the full article, but I was following the
Yep.
stories and reposts about it because it was really powerful. She talked about how over the years, how many people have spoken about and assumed, or I don't know if she did, or
Yes.
some
Yes. Yes.
commentators did, and assumed that she didn't want to have children. And then meanwhile, behind the scenes, she was actually dealing with really wanting to have kids and a fertility struggle that everyone was just talking about and making assumptions about.
Right. Right. And that was not the case at all. I want to just read a couple of the comments here. Someone saying, let's talk about the real issue here. Orthodox men in their 30s only want to date 20-year-olds. Again, bringing back to the first thing that we were talking about how people assume that 20-year-olds, their fertility is perfect and there's no problem. Yeah, see our eye roll. For all of you who are just listening to this at some point and you're not watching us, we're both of us are eye rolling. Um, leaving women in their late 20s and 30s left to date the 50-year-old divorced men. I mean, it's just it's yeah, mind-boggling. I think that okay, so let's be practical now. Let's be practical. And what can, being that singles are sitting with this disenfranchised grief, what can we do? What can we not do to make sure that people in the community are treating all of you out there appropriately, sensitively, and at the very least, if we can't be appropriate and sensitive, at least not disgusting and mean and obnoxious and rude. How's that? So I want to hit like a few things, and I think these were all the things that you hit in the reel that you just did. So
Okay.
let's talk about, and we touched on this already, but I just want to go back to it to emphasize it again. Let's talk about the money thing, right? Everybody assumes that because you're single, then you have lots of money to do whatever you want. You can travel. We're gonna do money. We're gonna do vacation. We're gonna do free time. Like everybody assumes that, oh, you only have yourself to take care of. You have money to travel or do whatever you want because you only have yourself to take care of. You can take whatever time off. You have no one else to be hold to. You can relax whenever you want to, and you have basically no responsibilities. So, honey, what say you?
Well, yeah, so I think of that those I don't know if I want to call them tropes, but misconceptions.
Yeah.
Those misconceptions really are not fair. A lot of people struggle financially as a single person. They're a single income household. They're doing everything themselves. They have no one else to split the tasks with them. And I think also it's just like the fact that there needs to be more awareness about this being something that singles might have pain about, and people just realizing that a lot of people may want to have kids desperately even if they're single, and just validating that pain and throwing out those comments like, at least you have time to go on vacation, you have money to go on vacation, when their kids are fighting, at least you don't have to deal with this. Realize that like that can be
Just take
extremely
one of my
painful.
kids, just
Right.
take one of my kids, or why don't you just adopt, or why don't you just, become a
Right.
single
So it's
parent?
just
Yep.
like, it just boils down to like learning to have empathy for this. So understanding that, sometimes there are single people who do have more time, money, ability to go on vacation. That may very well be true, but realize that for a lot of single people, that might be painful. And they might change that yesterday if it means that they were married and pregnant and having babies right now. So just going back to basic empathy, like, that might also be hard for someone who maybe is married with a bunch of kids and tired and missing, like, the single days. But I think just learning to empathize and to realize that this is a legitimate pain that a lot of us deal with. And then also I think like there's a component sometimes that there are people who are maybe sensitive but then refuse to share anything about their kids, right? So, oh my God, Nami.
Yeah, no, that's when I just covered my, yeah. So I'm sorry. So Nami just wrote here, people have just told me to marry anyone, knock out a few kids, and then divorce him. I mean, this is like the fact that these are things that people are saying. I'm sorry, and now we have a second
Panina.
person
We
who's,
have
who's saying,
we
yeah,
have three
Panina,
people.
yeah, three people are saying this happened to me too. Three people. I can't. Okay, can we just say like never, 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 never? Like what? Like what? What is this? What is this even about? Like, would you ever would you tell that to your best friend? Would you tell that to someone that you love? Like just like marry, a living body and then just, have a few kids and whatever. Like it is it is just not okay. It is really just not okay.
In general, people say a lot of things that they shouldn't to single people, but what Emma wrote is like so powerful and true. She said, "All I get is you're so lucky not to have kids. I'd have given anything to be tired, frustrated, broke, busy just to be a mom."
Right. That is, I look, I got married when I was 27. I can I can only speak to that existence and say that those years, I didn't start dating until I was 24 or 25. I was in medical school and I didn't want to start dating until I was towards the end of medical school. But I'll tell you that those years were incredibly painful. Watching people get married who had been married already, and the rest of my friends starting to get married, people having one kid, two kids, um, people saying things like, oh, you're too educated, nobody's going to want you. People saying things like, oh,
Sounds
you're
so familiar.
exactly. Oh, you're too focused on your career. Or it's in the opposite of what someone said. Someone said previously, someone said, well, what about all the people who are so busy? What about the people who are just trying to make it through the day, who want to support themselves and are supporting themselves on teacher salaries or other salaries that are that don't make as much money, that are not professional fields, so to
Yeah,
speak. And
100%.
these people are really struggling to just make ends meet, and then they get all of these others like, oh, why don't you just, or like, your life must be so great since you don't have blah blah blah. No, No, no. Okay, Chanie, so to close us out here, what do you want from people? What do you want them to say? Do you and also, like, one of the things that we didn't talk about was, do you want people to constantly be, showing you pictures of their kids? Like, do you get triggered by that? Do you want them, how much do you want people to include you in their lives when they're, having difficulties, when they're struggling, when they're, people who are married with children, or people with children in general? Um, and and just how can we as a community be kinder, be more sensitive, and be and just hold you in this pain? What can we do?
So I was actually just going to talk about the kids pictures thing. So for me personally, and I think this might be different for a lot of people, but I feel like probably a lot of people would agree with what I'm saying, is that I don't want people to not, people that I'm close with, people that I really care about them, and I care about their children. Like, there are children that I really love. I want to see those kids. Those pictures give me so much joy. I think for me, it's more getting pictures, or, my mother forwarding me the constant shul updates of, like, my camp count, like the kids that I was their camp counselor having grandchildren. I mean, I'm being a little, like, I don't need the birth the announcements and the pictures of children that are, like, not people that I care about deeply. That's painful, because I don't need to see, like, how many people in the world that are younger than me are married and having multiple children, but they should all be gebenched. But
I mean,
but the children that, like, I really care about, and, like, my friends' kids, like, I would love to see them. As far as what should people say, it's more about what should people not say, which is kind of learning to like unlearn everything that we're taught is okay to just, like, spew out to a single person. And really, like, rewiring your brain to have respect for single people, I think would help. I remember, even as, like, a young girl, like, looking down at these older single girls who were probably 23 and thinking there was something wrong with them. And I think that, like, if people learn to treat single people with respect, appreciate that it's not our fault that we're single, that we have pain that goes beyond our existence as a single person. We have lives beyond the existence of being single, and it really just goes back to respect and empathy, and I think just understanding that this is a legitimate thing that we're allowed to have pain for, and learning to have boundaries, and not ask invasive, inappropriate things that you wouldn't ask anyone else.
yes. Yes, I'm going to read out also just some of the things that people are writing here in the comments. I want them to think twice before saying anything. I'm always bothered when people complain about their children. Like, don't complain to singles about your kids.
Wait, I want to say something about
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
That is fair. I think for me personally, it's, like, important when there's balance, like, when I'm not constantly hearing about it, but also when, like, a friend is truly interested in hearing about my problems too. I think it becomes a challenge when sometimes people forget, and, like, the only thing they're sharing is complaining about their marriage and kids. But I found that people who, like, are more sensitive don't do that, and it's like it's about, like, I still want to hear about my friends' struggles, whether it's their kids, their husband, whatever they want to share, etc. It's just, I don't want it to be the only thing that we ever talk about.
Correct. And I'll say, just as someone on the other side, I know for the people that we have in our lives that are single, if there's something deeply important or something really significant that's going on with one of my children, and this is a person that knows lots of things about our lives, I, of course, am going to share that also.
Right.
But I'm not going to be complaining about, every 5 seconds, oh, you can't believe what this one did or that one did, or, like, that's something I won't do.
Right, because they're part of your life. Like, you want to be
Correct.
able to have that relationship where you're not walking on eggshells with sharing. But
Yes.
if you come from a place of empathy in general, I think, like, friends should be able to share that with single friends in a balanced way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, some more comments. I don't think the community or married people know what to say to you, because there's no real answer. Emma writing, yes, I agree. I always say, I don't want their kids. It's my own that I mourn not having, right? That's exactly what it is. Someone saying, I don't actually mind when friend complains. Sometimes it's part of sharing what's going on in each other's lives. Yes. Oh, big one, big one, big one. No Emir Tashem by you. I hear that everywhere, all the time. Yes, Connie? Yes, Connie?
Yeah, Miriam, it's funny because I think Miriam said it before, but thank you for repeating it. Yeah, I agree with banning Amir Tashem by you. Probably 22-year-olds would disagree with me, but as someone a decade older than them, it becomes like almost got lahavdil sounds like they're sitting shiva. Okay, like when the way people say it is like Amir Tashem by you.
Right, correct.
Like
it's like in that, like, oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's not necessary. Just say Mazel Tov. We're there to celebrate just like everyone else is. There's no reason to like say in a very like I'm so sorry for you kind of way, which is the tone that people naturally have. Not everyone, but a lot of times it comes out as like so sorry.
Yes, and also we're also forgetting about when they say it also with the head tilt. Amir Tashem by you. I'm so sorry.
Oh, Panina is so right. Clutching the hand tightly. So true.
Yes. Oh my God, so true. So true. Okay, Carmela Cosmetics saying, let's not tell anyone that they're being picky.
Well, that's also part of like people not having empathy for singles who don't have children is that a lot of people just assume that you are likely single by choice. This is your fault, right? So why would I have empathy for you that you don't have kids and a family? If you did this to yourself, you probably went and got a career and you said no to every guy that you shouldn't have, and it's kind of your fault. Right? So this definitely affects people's ability to have empathy. And just to clarify, in case that wasn't clear, I was being sarcastic. And most people are not single because it's their fault.
Of course, of course. And one last thing from me, and then I'm gonna let you say the final word. One last thing that personally always bothered me when I was single, and I hear this now, is when people refer to single women as girls, that no matter how old you are, you're a girl. The girls. These are women. Many of them have careers. Many of them are older than 18 or 20. And you don't call a 30-year-old woman, 30-year-old person who happens to be female. I feel like I have to be really careful in the way I'm saying this now. You're not, or a 40, or are you calling that person a girl? Like the single girls? No, these are women. You speak to people, I think all of us who have gotten over the age of 22, I'm just throwing that number out there just because I can.
21, whatever.
Okay, fine, 21. I think we've graduated from the word girls. So please don't call women girls. Are you going to call the men boys? Like sometimes they call the men boys too.
Yeah, they do. They do.
And I think it goes both ways. And I think it's really not appropriate. That's my own pet peeve. But I've heard it from a lot of people.
Right. Agreed. I definitely talk about that. Rachel Herkman's very passionate about that. And like, I don't particularly care getting called a girl in the sense that like, sure, tell me I'm still like young and beautiful, but it's more in the context of like society's view and that like you're always a girl until you're married. So you can be 30 and single and you're a girl, but the 20-year-old is married with a baby and she's a woman. So
Correct.
it's that's the boxing into that little label. Correct. That's not appropriate.
Correct. Not cool. Not cool. Okay. Chanie, final words.
I feel like I don't know anything else I want to add. I don't know. I think that's it. Just watch what you say. Appreciate that a lot of us have this pain and it's a legitimate grief. It's not so simple. Like, don't throw out simple, like, you're lucky you don't have kids. You're saving money, time, and you get to go on vacation. Just sit in silence. Silence is underrated. Appreciate that if someone says like, I'm so depressed about I haven't had a date and like I'm never gonna have kids and I'm never gonna etc. Like just sit with them and say like I'm really sorry, it's really difficult, and not try and dismiss it with a cheap comment like at least you can go on vacation.
Yes. And I'll also say that women and men who are not married are also incredibly thoughtful, interesting, multifaceted, and phenomenal people, even though they don't have a wedding, a wedding, a partner, a lifetime partner to be attached to at the moment. And people are who they are and are have so much richness to them beyond their marital status. So when you're engaging with singles, find out who they are. Forget about whether they're single or not. Forget about whether they're dating or not. There is so much richness and history and vivaciousness and amazing meet to figure out and to learn about people. People are so much more than just whether they're married or not. So be curious. Find out about people. Be actually curious and ask deep probing questions instead of just, oh, okay. Thanks. You're single. Great. Okay. Now I have nothing more to talk to you because all
Yeah.
I know how to do is talk about my kids.
I love that, by the way. That's really important. And really, it's just true in life, like learning to have like fulfilling interactions. And it's not just about like, oh, where's your husband? Where's your kids?
All right, guys. We will have more to say about this, coming up, but this is something that we talk about all the time on I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. We are a space that holds the pain for people who are struggling to have a child and individuals who are not with a partner at that moment or in their lives at this point. Those people are also very much struggling. And so we're going to continue having these discussions. We are always open to hearing more about this. And Chanie, I really just thank you so much for being open, being frank, being warm, being an address for people to go to when they want to have a discussion like this. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks for giving us a platform because it definitely needs to be spoken about probably more.
And we will. And we will. All right. Good night, everybody. Good night.
Bye.